Before I even let you say anything, Stephanie, I do want to let everybody know this woman she has been on the top 200 list for Swanopol, which is the top leaders in luxury or in real estate. You've been one of Inman's 101 innovative leaders. You have been named a woman of influence by HousingWire. She has been named by Luxury Daily a woman to watch. She also has been recognized by the National Association of Women in Real Estate as a Marketer of the Year. And those are just a few of your amazing accomplishments. So, Stephanie, thank you so much for being here and coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. I always love doing things like this, and it's great to meet you and hear more about your podcast and hear about your audience. So it's exciting. Congratulations.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And thank you for being here. So, having such an innovative leader, you know, full disclosure, everybody, you've not been a real estate agent, but you've been in this business for 20 years.
More, although now almost.
Right. 20
Yeah, time
plus,
flies.
should we say? We won't even say how many. I feel the same way. Mine's at 20 plus now.
Yeah.
You know, when we look at this business for you, being someone who's been a leader for so long, had so many awards in marketing, in leadership, just like luxury real estate, what is it that does differentiate a luxury brand and what luxury is?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's interesting to me that some people really just don't understand this, and it's just fundamentals of marketing. You mentioned, some of my background, and that's I came up in this business. My father was a real estate developer, so I grew up in the business, but sort of tangential to the business. And I went to graduate school for marketing, and I sort of came through the real estate marketing world. And if you know anything about branding or marketing, or if you've ever studied it, luxury brands, they're no luxury real estate brands are no different than any other brand, whether it's fashion designer or a car or a handbag. These top tier luxury brands, they draw inspiration from sources long outside of real estate, right? So, um, you know, just because it's high-end luxury real estate, and especially high-end luxury real estate, it's not just a decision about shelter. And I talk about this a lot. So when someone is buying a $5 million home, they're not looking to purchase four walls and a ceiling, right? It's really just not a
Or really
shelter.
square footage. I mean, they like some space, but yeah.
Yeah, right. But so it's not like, so what drives someone to purchase a home over 5 million is totally different than what drives someone to purchase maybe their first home or a home, under 25,000, whatever the market, and it's different in every market. So it's not a price point either. It's really a mindset. And so if you look outside of real estate, you look at like Hermes, they sell $25,000 handbags. You don't need that to carry your keys. So it's not functional. It's really an identifier or more about your persona. So
Right.
in home, it's so personal, right? So home reflects you and your lifestyle. And so brand is especially important in real estate because the home is really, the best reflection of you and your family and yourselves. And so that's why we describe Corcoran as more of a lifestyle brand. We actually don't really describe it even as a luxury brand, because we define ourselves through this our tagline or our ethos, which is live who you are. And it's all about like enabling people to live in the home that is best for them.
You know what's interesting about that when we talk about luxury? Well, to live who you are. Well, two
Yeah.
things. First of all, when you were talking about brands, I always talk about the Birkin. Like, you know, that's like a $50,000 bag, depending, and it could be a lot more. But like when you buy the Birkin, you're buying something that costs more than most cars. I think it still costs more than most cars.
For sure.
And
Yeah. But it's a
and
good
what are
investment. They increase in value. Yeah.
right? Exactly. I know I've got some clients who have closets of Birkins.
Yeah.
I
Of
still
course.
haven't
People
witnessed
collect
it with
them.
my own eyes,
Yeah.
but like, right? Exactly. But live who you are. Like, in anything people pay for, it's the authenticity.
For
It's
sure.
the authenticity of what it is, whether it's life and who you are, or especially luxury.
Well, live who you are applies to agents and it applies to customers too, right? So when you say to a client, our tagline or our ethos is live who you are, it's all about helping you find a home that's going to best reflect you and your lifestyle and your family. And so it becomes intimate and personal and exterior. It's not about us kind of chest pounding, telling you how great Brooklyn is. It's just about, look, we're going to make this an experience. It's all about you. And same for the agents, right? It's pretty
Right.
powerful.
And your dad, we start with this and we didn't today, but I love how you made sure we did anyway, is how you got a little bit about how where you got where you are. So growing up, you had a dad who was a developer.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
what's interesting is developers are all about the performa, all
Mhm.
about the return, all about absorption rates, all about all of that good stuff. But there's also the element of, I look at especially in markets like all markets, but especially in major cities like Manhattan, when the price records are broken, they're broken on lifestyle. They're broken on the experience they give the buyer
Yeah.
more than anything else. But like growing up with a dad as a developer, did it sounds like you probably leaned more into marketing and somehow landed in real estate, but tell us a little bit more about that experience and kind of what arrived you here to help us learn that much more
Yeah. I mean, I
from
never
you
would
while we've got
thought,
you.
yeah, I didn't think I was going to get into real estate at all. It
You
wasn't even
probably
on
were
my
like,
radar.
never, ever,
Yeah. Well, it
ever.
wasn't on my radar. Like, I mean, as a family growing up, in a real estate family, so that's where our wealth, or sometimes lack thereof, came from. But we talked about it at the dinner table every night. Like, and we on the weekends we drove around neighborhoods. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, so we drove around neighborhoods and looked at homes. And I knew about Frank Lloyd Wright when I was like 10 years old, and because my father was building prairie style homes, so I developed the language and the passion and the interest for real estate. And it was how we built wealth, right? So both through his business and also personally, they also were renovating homes. And that was it was just part of our language in life. I then was much more artsy and creative, and I was in acting and theater, and went to film school and undergrad. And so, I didn't ever think I would even be in business. I thought I was going to be, there's a minute when I wanted to be a stage manager. So, the path was circuitous at best. And it just happened sort of happenstance that after I went back to grad school for marketing. It's a long story, but I just, real estate was a passion, and that's, I think, the thread, was that it
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily something I wanted to do, but it was something that I knew intimately. And it always, and my husband's a developer too, so it's, we're renovating.
You can't
Yeah.
escape it. But there are two things that have already come up about it. Well, there's three actually. There's branding in general. There's what luxury real estate is, and that goes into lifestyle, living who you are. That goes into the authenticity. So it's what's the brand, what's the authenticity, because that brand and authenticity is what really brings things to light. And then after that, it's the real estate, the numbers,
Yeah.
like what they are, where they're going, but the
Mhm.
artistic side and all of that you just keep bringing out.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned authenticity, because it is something that's sort of always been one of my core values personally. And I do think it is, very much part of what attracted me to Corcoran too, because it's part of, kind of the brand values for the brand. And I think that people trust authenticity. And I think real estate agents, guys, we forget this. I think we're so worried, particularly for agents that are trying to increase their price point and trying to maybe be someone they're not. At the end of the day, what people want is great information and added value and help throughout the process. And so if people can do that authentically, then people will absolutely trust you, believe in you, and work with you again. And, ultimately, that's what we're all looking for. So authenticity is like the core. I think when people are putting out a facade of who they are, or pretending to be something they're not, people smell that, and it's something you just inherently don't trust.
And the higher the price point, the better usually the
And
buyers and sellers in that
luxury
price point
agents,
smell it.
lots of luxury agents are, maybe even rough around the edges, but they know their stuff, you know?
And they're authentic. I find it's funny because a lot of agents, when I was an agent, you've got all of these agents that will go after a certain price point.
Mhm.
But and not for everybody who's listening, this isn't necessarily to say you need to be a luxury agent, but just an interesting thing about, there's been a lot of conversation. I've been hearing the word value a lot lately. But as you climb up in the price point, the circles get a lot smaller.
Mhm.
They also the relationships get a lot more intimate
Yep.
and a lot more authentic. And in those circles, if there's any sense of not being transparent or lack of authenticity, you will be blacklisted because they
Oh,
don't tell you you're out,
that-
right? You're just out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so in that, and also recognizing like a cubic zirconium can look exactly like a diamond and can be gorgeous, but it's never going to be worth more than a couple $100s.
Right. Yep.
A diamond, on the other hand, like think about the more pressure, the more authentic, the more the value just goes up. And same thing for people
No question.
in
Yeah.
business and real
It all kind
estate.
of goes back to quality too.
What's that?
It goes back to quality too. You know, I think, you know, your CZ versus the diamond example, like the quality is what drives the price. And so certainly we see that in the high end, but also as humans, as agents, the quality of the content and the information and the value we're adding to people, it's worth something to people for sure.
And a sense that this is real people is probably refreshing.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's found its moment. And
Yeah.
I, you know, again, been in this business so long that it's lovely to me to say, you know, when you go into a room and train a group of agents on how to increase their price point, it isn't always about just, you know, wear a Chanel suit anymore. It's important to look good, but there's so many deeper things that you can do and ways in which you can, you know, break into that business. And it's not just about what you look like. It's important to look good. So I
Well,
don't want to brush
I,
it off, but yeah.
I've got to, this reminds me, I remember being in real estate and breaking into the luxury market, and literally the outfits I was wearing, nobody needed to know where I bought them as long as you made them. It is about what you wear and how you look, but it's about understanding how to do it right. I remember I had a colleague and all she wore was Chanel.
Yeah.
Most horribly dressed person. Now, not, Chanel, don't get me wrong, it is Chanel, I'm a big fan, but it's more than just putting on the Chanel outfit. It's more than just that. It goes so much deeper than that, which brings me to another question. You know, the business of real estate, there's the essence of like, we've got mostly real estate agents listing. And looking at in our business, whether you're an agent or a brokerage, it is so highly competitive. As someone, again, who has gotten the recognition you have and has got the experience in development and leadership, and as you lead Corcoran, what is it that gives someone a competitive advantage, and what is it that gives Corcoran the competitive advantage?
Yeah. You know, so I'll start with Corcoran because, you know, I talked about it a little bit, but I think first and foremost, it's the brand. And it is partly that consumer centric thing we talked about. But, you know, we also obviously empower our agents to be, you know, incredibly knowledgeable about their craft and ensure that they are world class. But, you know, I think that having good design matters a lot to affluent consumers, particularly when you go back to the examples we talked about and kind of the other ways that they're shopping and the other brands that they're representing or you know, surrounding themselves with. People care what the sign is that's in their front yard. And, you know, I wouldn't discount that because it matters. But also I think it's just about, you know, ensuring that our team is really educated. So we have this like many brands, but we have an online learning platform called Agent Studio, which is truly world class. And, you know, we ensure that our agents are up to speed on not just market level, but everything that's happening in the industry and the ecosystem. So whether it's, you know, what's happening with, you know, Bitcoin, you know, we make sure that our agents know what their customers want them to know. And it doesn't necessarily have to be just about real estate.
Well, that's interesting too, because a lot of times, you know, when you're doing business, you're meeting your client where they are. Back to
Mhm.
authenticity, back to brand, and back to things like Bitcoin or the stock market, or what's another one that's come up recently that now I'm not going to think of because I'm trying too hard to remember it. But all of those things in real estate that make a big difference. So like when you say, but you say ecosystem, when you say that, you mean like the other things that are just driving the economy in general that drives the residential real estate market, or
Yeah.
the fact that the residential real estate market is often driving all of that. It's relevant to see how they play and balance each
Stock
other out.
market. They got to know what the stock market's doing and why it matters. And if people are, you know, wanting to take their money out of the stock market, it's a good time for them to invest in real estate. So you need to understand the basic principles of economics. And it's not just about, well, here, you know, average sale price is up. I was listening to a speaker recently, and he said, "Is now a good time to buy?" And the whole group of agents said yes. And he said, "Is now a good time to sell?" And the whole group of agents said yes. And he was like, "You guys, stop doing that. like be honest and give me insight into why. Don't just like try to convince me that now is the right time to buy or sell. And so I think it's important that they recognize the economic drivers that then drive the economy and that might drive price point and, you know,
right?
everything.
Well, it's like for some buyers, maybe it is the time to buy. And for some sellers, it's understanding in general, it's not a seller's market, as we know. In general, we can position to be a seller's market. And what are the driving factors that attract the buyers for which we increase the demand and have the lowest supply to drive what buyers? Like you were talking about stock, we all know this, but I'm going to indulge anyway. When the stock market isn't doing well, very often people are pulling their money out and putting it in real estate, or more, it's a great time to make sure you've got money in real estate.
Oh, that you got it.
People are
Totally.
very motivated. And as a seller, it's understanding that. Understanding that is understanding how we target our marketing to identify our buyer.
That's it.
Now, as you look at, the luxury market, I've got two questions, and I'm going to say it makes me want to ask you three, but I'm going to ask you two. There are two things. There are challenges we have in navigating the market, and then there's what do you foresee for the luxury market and real estate in general? Which one should we do first?
So it's always a good question. And, I don't have a crystal ball, but what I do know is history, right? And I know that the luxury consumer is, well, if we look at even, through the pandemic, we're generally flush with cash. That's a big part of why we're seeing, so many purchases over $1 million, $2 million being done in all cash. And so we also know that the luxury market tends to lead us out of difficult times. It tends to be the market that does that because it's a discretionary purchase. And so people who have money can continue to make the choice. And so that's a really important and powerful thing to understand. So I think that I have confidence that the luxury market's going to still stay strong. It depends on the market. I live in Austin, Texas, and we've shifted into a little bit of buyer's market. We're a little bit different than the rest of the country because we had such a fast run up. And so there are different dynamics that are happening locally. And at the end of the day, real estate's always a local business. But I think that inventory is the biggest, well, there's two things, inventory and there's mortgage rates. And so even though mortgage rates may come up or down and the high end is not purchasing in cash, affluent consumers are very smart about the way in which they use and invest their money. And so they want to know that they're getting money, inexpensively. And so even though it may not affect their purchase ability, it will affect their purchase decisions. So I think the outliers or the unknown factors are absolutely inventory and absolutely mortgage rates. So, I think there's a lot of noise about that, but at the end of the day, this is a supply and demand business. And so,
Exactly.
but I have confidence in our ability to weather in the high end. But I also tell people you don't index solely in the high end because it's important to differentiate your business, whether they're an affiliate, a corporate, franchise of ours in their company or an agent. It's important to work all sides of the market because things can happen in one side that maybe don't affect the other side.
Well, actually, the interesting thing is, I always lean into like focus on what you're good at, but it's funny how we can always reframe that in real estate. For example, if you're a big luxury agent, there's a lot of power in that because of the resources you have to have people investing in other homes that give you the whole reach of that market. Um, but as I think about that, here's something else kind of looming, and I bet it, or not looming is the wrong word, in the back of everybody else's mind. We've got a master marketer and a huge leader that like we're getting to listen to right now. As a master marketer and a leader, what makes great marketing and what makes a great leader? And how do you do both so well in one role?
Well, a lot of great people. I don't personally. I mean, truly, I think it's being surrounded by world-class people. And so, marketing is my background, and I recognize good marketing. And I think clever marketing that stands out or makes you remember it, or makes you think, or makes you stop, or makes you giggle, or have an emotional response. That's a theme of everything I just said. That's great marketing, right? So, the most successful thing I think I have is the ability to recognize it. And I'm not the creator of it any longer, that we have incredible team of people. And, my colleague or, co-conspirator, some might say, is our Chief Marketing Officer, Christina Panos. And I'm just incredibly proud to sit beside her because she does things that are way better than anything I would have ever done. So, and I think that is part of what makes a good leader is recognizing what you're good at, what your strengths are, but then celebrating and letting other people do what they're really good at and not trying to get in their way. So
Mm.
that's something that, I always am striving to be better at myself, but it's something that my mentors and the people that I deeply respect in this business, I've watched them do. And, it's something that I can be better at myself.
So to rephrase, we're talking about marketing and leading. On marketing, have you ever heard of the book Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff?
Yes, yes,
And he talks about the croc brain.
yeah,
So basically what you just said was whatever you do, make sure it can't get to the neocortex if it doesn't get through the croc brain.
yeah.
So, and for everybody who doesn't know what we're talking about, there's actually a TED Talk. No, it's not a TED Talk, but anyway,
I haven't seen.
nobody, like, we usually sell by being rational and explaining things, but people aren't interested in making decisions on that. They've got their more basic part of their brain, like every animal has, they
Yeah,
call the reptile brain, or a Clive calls the croc brain, that unless it's addressing something that's really on their mind because they can't solve the problem, or something they're generally afraid of, or something that's novel, it isn't getting through. And if it's novel, it better quickly become relevant, or it'll get through for a minute and it'll get a good laugh, but it
yeah.
won't get
Well,
computed
right.
to make that, right? To make that
Transfer
decision.
to a decision, right? Or like a purchase. And, yeah, for sure. I think people make that mistake all the time that they try to make an intellectual argument in an emotional situation. At the end of the
And
day,
real estate is
yeah,
like, if there's anything, home, money, family, just don't bother those things with other people and you'll stay in good terms with them. And
right.
yet in real estate, we're making money on that, on the things that trigger that. And yet we're trying to rationalize it, which
Well, how
only
many
makes people
people,
mad.
yeah. Well, how many times have we said buyers are liars, right? They think that they know what they want, but then they see something they love and suddenly they find, another $100,000. So, it just goes to show you the power of the emotional decision making and how that's such an important part of this business for sure.
And as their guide, the last thing we want to do is over explain it or tell them, especially I always say, if anybody's watching, I'm pointing at you right now for people who are not watching it, because most people do listen to this, but like, it's rude to point. It's just because it's rude to point. Like, as an agent, telling people they're wrong or telling people I told you so, it's just like pointing. Just don't do it.
Well, and
But
that,
back to the
yeah.
whole point of this is, what if you can trigger and be clever and get people's attention, you've got brilliant marketing. So as somebody who's, you've been recognized as one of the greatest marketers in real estate, are there any secrets or any ahas that you've had to like nail that? Like, you've probably created it. Now you're seeing it. Like, how do you know what it is? How do you, like, what is it that just pulls it out?
Yeah. So, I mean, you kind of have to go back to knowing your voice, right? And
Mm.
there's tons and tons of books about this and about being able to identify what's important to you as a company or as an individual and then being true to that. So once you have a North Star, then you can recognize that we have a very, very clear understanding of what the corporate voice is. And, there's a little bit of wit, there's a little bit of edge. And that's important for corporate. That wouldn't work for other brands in the business because it's not who they are. And so that back to the authenticity piece of it too. So identifying your voice and then being true to that, I think is one of the most powerful things you can do, because that's all about personal branding. And personal branding isn't a logo. It's really, identifying what makes you unique and then, celebrating that.
And
So
you just, right,
yeah,
like you said, it's having wit and having an edge. It reminds me when I was a newer agent and learning branding, it was a brander said to me, it's exactly what you're saying, but just to repeat it, like, know what it is, know those common things. Like, every time somebody looks at this, it's wit and it's got an edge and it's authentic.
yeah, if that's right for you. I mean, that's what's right
Yeah, well, that's Corcoran, right? Like,
right. But like for, there
yeah.
may be a brand that says like, hey, we're all about exclusivity. We tend to, like I said, we don't use the word luxury to describe the brand, but we'll use words like smart and sophisticated because it's much deeper then, I mean, luxury has been so overused in our business too. Obviously, it doesn't mean anything. And, everyone has a luxury brand now, so, or a luxury
So
division.
true.
It really is kind of digging deeper and then really, you know, getting to your core DNA.
Yeah, well, it's funny. And while I do have breakthrough luxury coaching, like the word luxury almost implies it's not,
It can.
right? Like if you think like real luxury, it just is. When I think about selling expensive homes when I was an agent, one of my favorite stories is one of my colleagues had gone and shown a $5 million lot. And in Atlanta, that's a really expensive lot.
Sure,
Like
totally.
at that point in time, only no more than 7 years, no more, no, it's no more than probably at 20 homes a year. No more than 7 homes a year were selling even at 7 million. And that was the highest price of a home at that time. So this is a $5 million lot. And my colleague comes back and he says, man, I just wasted my time. This guy shows up in a pickup truck. His shoes aren't even that great. You look at the shoes and the watch; those weren't even that great. Those were like he didn't even have it. And I sat there and spent an hour and a half with him on a $5 million lot. And I looked at him, and not to be, I told you so, but I was like, I bet that's your buyer.
Yeah.
A week later, cash offer. Another 2 weeks later, closed.
I mean, it's very old school thinking, for sure. The times have changed and the
Yeah,
wealth, it's no longer, the guy in the Prada, whatever. It's, now it's the guy in the hoodie. So you just don't know anymore.
right. Exactly. Now, leadership. You said something I think is relevant. If you, like, as agents, we talk about how to sell all the time, but one of the
Mhm.
most powerful things is understanding leadership because we are leaders to our clients,
Definitely.
whether they know it or not. And I think the same thing works for leaders. And as a leader, you said getting out of people's way. How do you know whose way you need to get out of? And how do you know who might be getting in the way? And how do you navigate that?
I mean, there's no one size fits all solution, right? But I do think that if you're a naturally inquisitive human, you'll understand the dynamics, right? So, and you got to be honest with people and you can't be afraid to have hard conversations. So I think that when people are in their own way, for example, not being afraid to tell them that is, it's such an amazing skill and will, serve you so well in your business throughout your entire career. But the same thing is true with, like sometimes you got to create a diversion. So let's just say they have to have their kids at every listing and they believe that their kids are going to be part of the process and the kids are, causing a distraction or not helping them to be able to focus. Being really creative at thought, like bringing coloring books or, creating, like I had a client, a true story was they showed a house and the house was on a cliff and there was a beach down below and they set up a whole, thing with a sand castle and buckets and so that the kids could go out and play. And so they took them out of the line of vision so that their clients could really
And
focus.
it helps sell the house.
Yeah, 100%, because then they could
Because the
see
kids had a heck of a great time. And as much
experience.
as we parents like to pretend we don't let our kids drive their decisions, or some of us admit that we do, we
Yeah,
do.
yeah, exactly.
We
So,
do.
yeah.
Yeah.
But being, I think, emotionally intelligent, not always, it's not something you can teach per se, but, asking yourself questions and recognizing like everything that could be going into a situation and then trying to solve creatively for it.
Right. There's so many problems in this business. And in that emotional intelligence, something that you just described was it's, there's an obstacle, there's a solution, but between the obstacle and the solution, there can be a lot of drama, or you can get really clever and create an experience that turns the obstacle into not just a solution, but a better opportunity.
Well, I think if you think of like the most successful agents that you know or in your market or that you can watch or that you maybe admire, I think one thing I always say that, agents are they're so resilient and are so creative and
So
creative,
true.
I don't mean creative in terms of like, drawing or painting or things like that, but creative problem solving, you know, putting together things with paper clips and scotch tape. It's really a big part of what makes someone successful is being able to come up with really creative solutions.
Business is an art, and I don't remember who said it, but there's a quote out there. There's probably a few that says, your business is really the tool through which you evolve as a human.
Mm, I love that.
And man, I wish I could remember who said that. It may have been a couple of people,
I can relate to that 100%. Yeah, for sure.
right? I remember as a real estate agent, and even now as still a podcast host and a coach, but as a real estate agent, I used to say, if it weren't for this business, the challenges it presents to you, because it's not like it's dire. It can be, it is, and
Yep.
it feels dire. It's home family money,
Yeah. I mean,
but
we're
we're
not
not,
not curing cancer. You're right.
right.
Yeah.
Right. But in that, the emotion and intensity of it and knowing the reality challenges you to really learn some things that you might not bother or be in the position to learn at
Yeah.
that level, to grow as a human and see that in those trivial little things, there's some really little adjustments that can not just be not just be like make you a lot of money, but be truly life altering in the bigger picture, and make sure you just keep, like, the more money you have, the more you just are who you are. So let's just make sure we keep being a better person too.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Yeah. No question.
So, like, when you think about business for you, there's strengths, weaknesses, and challenges.
Mhm.
What is your biggest strength? What is your biggest weakness? And what has been your biggest challenge? And which one should we learn about first?
I'll do them in order. I'll do them in order. I think we've talked a little bit about already, but empathy, I think, in terms of strength, being able to be empathetic has made me be able to mold myself to not just different people, but to different markets around the world. And, I've had an opportunity to grow brands internationally. And so, I think recognizing that this is a human condition and being empathetic to what that is, I think, really, really just served me well, because it's helped me make greater connections in relationships. And I think it's true absolutely for a real estate agent. I personally have not sold real estate, and I have the deepest respect for real estate agents, because I couldn't do what you guys do every day. Like, I need a paycheck, and I know that about myself. I need to know that every morning I know what my paycheck's going to be at the end of the week. But I have the deepest respect for all of the challenges that come with the decision when you don't know what that is. So
Yeah.
I think also I have a lot of innate curiosity. I do ask a lot of questions, and I'm very intimately aware when I'm working or talking to someone who isn't and doesn't. That's just, and you know what I'm talking about. When you're sitting
Yeah.
across from somebody, I mean, you're asking questions professionally, but like, when you find that somebody doesn't ask a single question, it's such a turnoff to me, because I am so intellectually curious. I can question someone to death, and it helps me to understand them better, and to understand their market, understand their business, understand their challenges, and then I'm empowered to be able to help them with it. And as a real estate
Yeah.
agent, I mean, if you can have a natural conversation with someone about the things that they care most about in the world, you are so much more empowered to help them with their real estate decisions, even if it has nothing to do
Well,
with
back to the commonalities of leadership and being an agent. So, it drives me crazy how much quote unquote, and we don't know one another that well,
yeah.
but I have a feeling we might stand in the same place on this. Scripting. I'm like, how can you script people and get anywhere? Because when you're scripting, you're not listening and you're not empathizing and you can't be curious and you're certainly not asking questions.
Right.
But if you can ask questions and actually be open and receptive to what's on the other end, you can empathize. And back to what you're saying about just strengths and growth, very often the greater opportunities out there for us are the ones we are completely unaware of,
Yeah.
and we're not going to get if we don't stop and listen and empathize and learn and stay in that
Yeah.
state of just
I mean,
truly curious.
I agree. I think the power in some scripting is to help people have guidance, but it's never really intended for people to say, use these words. And I think the most important thing is if you
But
can,
they do, Stephanie,
yeah,
but they
I know,
do.
I know. But I think if you can help understand
Right.
the why behind the script,
Yeah.
right? That's the most powerful learning opportunity. And so so sometimes I'll use scripts as an example, but you focus on the why. Here's a potential solution, and then you just put it in your own words. And if you can't, I agree with you. That's a limiting factor
It
for
helps
the
you.
user.
It helps you have a frame. This is my defense because I forget I've been doing this for like selling houses. I'm not selling them for 3 years, but for 18 and a half years, I sold homes.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a frame by which if you can have kind of like a script in mind. It can help you get your bearings in a difficult situation, as
Hmm.
long as you're not leaning into that,
Yeah.
but letting that kind of be like that foundation to give you stability in a conversation without losing your sense of hearing, listening, and empathy.
Yeah.
Now,
And experience helps.
right. So that was like that. I know I threw three questions at you,
Oh
but
yeah.
hey,
Sorry, I just answered
let's
one.
keep it. Number one was strength. Then we talked about weaknesses,
Yeah.
and then we'll talk about challenges and achievements. But when you look at weaknesses, what is yours?
Sleep. It is not
I
my,
need it. That's mine,
I
right?
often say to people, sleep is not my talent. So, but it's not something I shouldn't say. I'm not proud of it. It's unfortunate and it's just, it is what it is. But no, I mean, just kidding. Um, I think that, in all honesty, I do struggle with letting go. I'm very stubborn and I'm not one to admit defeat. So, and sometimes, I've got to recognize that something's not fixable and it's better to, it's a really good for me as a leader too, like to say, if someone's in a role that maybe they're not in the right seat, for example, or if you're working with a client and, you just aren't connecting, there's a time at which it makes sense to cut bait early and just say, move on. I am not good at that. I am a work in progress. And that's something that I'm working on this year for sure.
But
Definitely.
you know what it makes me think of? Your strength. It's like, and everybody, I always think, or maybe it's just my excuse, but your strength is your weakness, and your
Mm,
weakness is your strength. So when the weakness comes out, it's like, okay, that's coming as a result of something that's worked for me before.
yeah.
So give like that helps me go, okay, but still in this situation, there's something extra I need to learn,
Yeah. Yeah.
or just give it to
So
somebody else and lean back into the strengths.
I'm glad you said that though, because I mean, learning is, I don't know, like I think if your aperture is opened to know that you always have more to learn, you are, and as a
Man,
coach, right? Like you, when people are committed to iterative success and progress and change and evolution, it's really powerful. And so I would never tell you I know it all, not even remotely. I can't even, I don't know how I've gotten in this business for 20 years. At the end of the day, like I still have so much to learn. And that's a big part of why I still enjoy it so much.
so if you stop growing, you're dying. So, and that means to me, and I think it's like that's learning.
Mhm.
Now, challenges and achievements. What's
Mm.
your biggest of each? Are you most proud? You're probably not proud of the challenge, except for maybe what you learned from it. But biggest challenge, proudest achievement.
I actually would say it's the same thing, ironically. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, my biggest
Yeah.
challenge. So I moved into this seat at Corcoran. We launched our very first franchise. So Corcoran is a 50-year-old brokerage business in Manhattan and the Hamptons and Palm Beach. And, it's a long, long, long time brand. And we launched the first franchise in February of 2020. So, I mean, the month before the pandemic. And so
Well, was that the one that was that? Can we say which one it was?
it was actually one that's no longer, it's defunct.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because you also launched the Corcoran brand on 30A,
Dead. That was
Corcoran
a third, I
Reverie.
believe. Yeah.
Yeah, that was around, I think I want to say it was in March.
In March or April, I think. And I didn't
Yeah.
join, I didn't join the company until July. So
Oh,
that
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
right. I launched shortly after we had launched the brand. And when I joined, it was the height of the pandemic. We had this brand new brand that we had just launched. The market had gone from totally stopped to like just beginning to pick up. I mean, July, we kind of were seeing signs. We weren't sure yet. And we couldn't travel. I live in Austin,
And
Texas.
you didn't have the benefit of hindsight we do now of where the market was going to do.
No way. And like I lived in Austin, that most of the team was in the New York area. So I couldn't even physically meet anybody until like the fall. So it was just it was an insane experience looking back at it. And I had left a company that I had a job I had been in for over 15 years. And so it was a really, really big deal and emotional for me to make a change like that. So making that kind of change at that time and then kind of going from starting this brand, this franchise to the hottest market we'd ever seen, to the second biggest decline we'd ever seen in the 4
Yeah.
years since we launched the brand. So it's been an absolute roller coaster. There's some things I would change, truthfully, but
Yeah.
we've learned so much. And so that's why I say it's also probably my proudest achievement because we've just in that time, considering what we've done and the quality people we brought on and the amazing markets we've launched, and it's been a great experience. I'm tired, but it's been a great experience.
Right? I
Yeah.
remember being, and I didn't live here yet, but I remember driving down 38 and seeing those Corcoran signs go up. And I was an agent in Atlanta. And I've told Hillary this before, who's
Yeah.
the owner, Hillary and Jacob are the owners of the Corcoran Reverie down here. But I remember thinking, like, I'm glad they're not in Atlanta. Like,
Oh, is that right? I
I
love
remember
hearing
just
that.
thinking, like, I'm glad I'm not dealing with this in Atlanta. Like, you made a big splash. It was impressive. It was
Yeah,
like,
well, they were great partners for us, and we really that was a rocket ship of a company.
yeah.
The story is only just beginning, frankly. So,
So, like, all in all, I've got one more question, then we're going to do the final three that are quick questions. Before we do the final three, like, as you look at your business and maybe life, whatever it is you want to share, what has been your biggest epiphany?
so I'll go back to the story I told about how I ended up, being a film school student, and then now kind of having this role of being in business. And um, I think that, I surround myself with people that are smarter than me. And, we talked a little bit about this already, but, the fact that I can relax and let other people pull their weight, that's been something that I've had to come to over my maturation of my career. Right. And so coming from, I think, being in a solitary, creative, sort of internally focused, path in the world to working into real collaboration and then understanding business. And so I think the biggest epiphany I've had is just like, that I don't need to be involved in everything. I'm constantly saying to people all the time now, please go ahead, do it without me. And I love it. So, and that's been something that I just turned 51 actually yesterday. So, it's something I've really just come to in the last couple of years is to be able to let go and say, there are a lot of great, smart people who are much better at what they do than I have my place, they have their jobs, and get out of their way.
Wow. And there's a lot to be said for getting the right, which that would be a whole another interview, making sure you've got those right people in on the seat of the bus
Learned a lot there too. Definitely.
to let them do that. Um, I'm going to ask one more and then we'll do the final three. Like, this was a question that was sent to me, and I don't know if you know it, but I have permission to ask you this. What have you overcome to reach your high level of success?
Mm. So the honest truth is that, again, this path, right, coming out of being a creative person, and I was working in advertising in Chicago and recognized that I really loved marketing, but I didn't know anything about it. And so I decided I wanted to go back to grad school, and I decided I wanted to go Northwestern. And I was so not qualified for it. But the biggest problem was I didn't know math. I mean, I literally didn't know math. I came through like all of like high school and college was just about avoiding math. And
Oh
so I
my gosh, wow.
crazy. So I bought an algebra book online. It's a true story in, gosh, 1998. And I just worked through it cover to cover on my own, in like privately, because I was so embarrassed that I really just didn't know math. And I thought I was never going to need it, and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, so I taught myself algebra-ish, as a way,
Algebra-ish.
yeah, like cheats, but as a way to learn, to study for the GRE. And then
Yeah.
I got a decent score in the GRE. I have no idea. I got a Northwestern somehow. And then the first thing they said to me was like, before you start, you've got to go take a stats course because I'd never taken stats. So I took stats. Turned out I loved stats. And so I don't know. I mean, I think I really overcame not knowing math. And the truth is, I don't think, and I have no idea the science of this, but I can tell you that when I was 14 years old and I couldn't do basic algebra, I don't think my brain was like evolved enough to understand it. I really don't. And somehow when I was 25 and I took another stab at it back from like literally the first thing I
Yeah.
learned what a reciprocal was. I mean, I just was like starting from the beginning. So anyway, I think, um, That's one of the things that I don't talk about that very often, to be honest. And, math is, I love statistics and I actually
Yeah.
love the business of real estate.
But you have the life experience to apply to the relevance of statistics that makes it interesting. It
Yeah,
makes me think about language. So for me, like, I don't know why, but all my life, I had decided that I can't learn another language. I would take Spanish and figure out how to pass it, and I took Italian and passed it, and
yeah,
French. But I was like, in my mind, I was like, I can't do it. Like I wasn't even consciously believing that, but it was a belief that resided. And then I became a coach, and I started coaching a lot of people in South Florida. And I've got all these
I can
clients from
speak
Argentina,
Spanish.
y
Yeah.
Cuba, y Colombia, y necesito aprender español, o quiero aprender español. So I just said I realized I needed to learn it, and I wanted to learn it, or I want to learn it. And just one day, I just was like, wait, what the, like, I just like, it just shifted. It was like my
Now
brain
it
just
makes sense.
shifted.
Yeah.
And suddenly I was like, no, no, I'm going to learn this. It was like, it was interesting. You make
And
me
have
think
you?
about that.
I mean,
Like, as
do you have a language
adults,
now? I mean, can you speak Spanish?
I can have a conversation.
Yeah.
Like yesterday, like everywhere I go, somebody speaks Spanish, hablas español, and we'll chit chat just to practice. And it took me a year and a half, and actually it took me a year to really chit chat with people, or maybe less. But anyway, my point in that is, isn't it interesting how we kind of inadvertently have these, I call it, it's really called self-concept, as you probably know in psychology, but we have these beliefs about ourselves that we just like take on
Yeah.
that aren't necessarily accurate. And
Yeah.
there's a little life experience
Yeah. For
and
sure.
like
Yeah.
those little things that some people may be going, okay, Jerry, with the woo woo, but those little woo woo things are the little things that come in here that change our actions, that change, have drastically different outcomes on the life experience that we have.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Your brain can be your biggest thing to overcome, to your point. Just
Yeah.
who you are and what you can and can't do. And sometimes you just need to do it and then you can believe you can do it. That's why all those like challenge courses work and things like that too. Because when you push past it, it can be really powerful, but it's scary. And so,
Yeah.
you got to just have sometimes you got to have someone else push you.
Right. It's like if business is an art, but being so afraid of math and then like going in and realizing your own passion for it, I'm the opposite. Mine was always in language and on the other end of the spectrum. And I've gone like, I've learned like, wait, I've actually, like, who knew? Who knew,
Yeah.
other than like I just, somebody told me, or something in the world told me, gave me a message, and I just took it on.
Yeah.
And look at all the things we limited ourselves from when we do or don't do that.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I have to say, like, this part of what I love the most about this job is that I'm helping people structure deals. And there's a lot of really complicated math and stats. And it's actually really funny, just a side funny story. So my
Yeah.
husband is a structural engineer and he's a math geek, right? And he can't, like, I can read a book in like a third of the time he can because I know how to speed read and that's just the way my brain works. He can do a math problem like, he still does trig in his job every day. So, right, our brains are so incredibly different. And so he always laughs because he'll, kind of hear me working on a deal and he'll be like, who are you? Like, and it's amazing, and I was like, I love it. It turns out I totally love it. So
Right.
you just
Like,
never know.
how amazing is that? And the thing about real estate is that there are always different avenues that you can take in this business, that you can reinvent yourself and dive into a whole spectrum of owning and learning and being good at this, and literally design your little, like as an agent anyway, your business around all the other things that other people are better at. All right. Final three questions.
Okay.
Number one, if you had to identify one resource as being the most powerful for creating your success, what would it be?
This is the Wall Street Journal.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, and that was when I went to grad school, the first thing that they said was, get a subscription to the Wall Street Journal. I was never read the Wall Street Journal, but it is the
And there's
most
a summary on the front page too, which is great, right?
amazing. Yeah. But it's like, it's such an incredible way to open yourself up to what's happening, just not in our country, but in the world, and all the complexities of challenges and changes and things that you can different ways people have solved problems. And, I think when you understand, it's kind of like there's no new problems. It's all, you just look at history and it's all repeats himself. You just have to look at what's happening in other places in the world and understand what's happening in other business and industries. And then you can apply it to everything we do every day. It's great.
And think about, as we all know, the convert. Sometimes as agents, we get so caught up on selling, 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 but it's the knowledge, the leadership, the insights that cultivate so much more.
Yeah.
Number two, if there is a book that's changed your life and that we've got to read to, it could be life, business, whatever. What is it?
So, the first one that popped to my brain, I probably have to think about the very first one that popped to my brain that was Good to Great. And I suspect you get this one all the time because it was a,
No,
oh,
I
come on.
don't.
Oh gosh,
And I love it. Yeah, it's a great book.
it's a transformational book that again isn't just about business, but it's about how you can lean in and, you can be average or you can really, take the next steps. And so it's something that has applied to me personally and professionally. And I read it a long time ago and, I would love to actually read it again now that I think about it, because at the moment, it was just it was like one of those aha, right? And so,
Yeah.
there's also a really, really, really great one out right now that's making the real estate circuits. It's Will Giardia. I think I'm getting it wrong, but it's called Unreasonable Hospitality. And
Oh, I like the
yeah,
name.
it's amazing.
So
So it's about
unreasonable hospitality. No,
yeah,
yeah.
Michelin star restaurant in New York, and how their business wasn't actually serving people food. It was, exceeding their expectations. And so doing just crazy over the top service things. And it's anyone in real estate should read it.
Oh, I love that. There was a restaurant in Atlanta I used to always take my team to because they did that. And I was like, look, we're just going to go here to remember this stuff. I mean, I love that. But Good to Great, it reminds me of we as humans can easily forget this. But one of what you said, but another way they worded it was it's actually sometimes we're just good instead of great because that seems easier.
Hmm.
Like being mediocre is a lot more difficult than excellence. And being excellent is just a lot more
Excellent,
fun.
you can own it too. Yeah.
All right, last question. If we forget everything about this conversation, you, me, and everybody listening, if you do hope if only one thing was going to be remembered,
Yeah.
what do you hope that is?
I'm glad we ended talking about it because I think it's this concept of like knowing your voice and being authentically you. Because I love how our industry is transforming and changing because more and more people are, embracing and adopting this as a way to really form and transform their business. And it's partly because our business is getting younger too. And I just see a lot of incredible changes. But even if people, you Google like, how do I find my voice and figure out what the right words are to describe you? I think it's just it's a really, really powerful way that you can create your own, individual path, no matter what brokerage or brand or company that you're under. And then you can distinguish yourself.
Your voice is your foundation.
Well
And the
said.
more solid that is, the more naturally everything else is going to come about.
I can see why you do this. You're very good at it.
Thank you, Stephanie. I like it.
Yeah, I can tell.
Thanks for joining us for the Jerry Metcalf podcast. To get links to our amazing guests, past shows, and more, go to breakthroughluxury.com and click on podcasts, or find us anywhere you can find a podcast. And please subscribe to the show and leave us a 5-star review so that we know that you are getting the most out of what we bring you every week.